Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Jumpstart Your Energy. And with a little bit of a warm-up activity, we just want to know a little bit, if you could put into the chat, what activities do you like to do in the winter? And this could be indoor or outdoor. So just jot, what do you like to do in the winter, in the coldest part of Wisconsin weather? So if you could spend a little time just writing a couple things in. Snowshoe, reading, sitting in front of a fire, yes.
Ooh, I love that.
Cribbage, quilting, drink hot cocoa. It's going fast here, swimming at the Y.
Ooh, walking outside, puzzles.
Yeah. Tubing, sleep, read a book, crossword puzzle.
Cross country, bird watching.
Yeah. This is great because we're going to talk about some of these things coming up.
Binge TV.
Okay. Well, jumpstart your energy. So Jane, I'm going to hand these off to you so you can jumpstart your energy. I've got my jumper cables here, and hopefully we're going to jumpstart some of our participants today into fun learning. So Jane, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good morning. And Karen, thanks for handing those jumper cables to me so that I could, jumpstart my energy today. And good morning, everyone. We're so glad that you're joining us today. I'm Jane Jensen, Associate Professor. I'm a Human Development and Relationships Educator with UW-Madison Extension in Sheboygan County, over here on the lake shore.
And I'm Karen Dickrell. I'm a professor in the Department of Family Development, Human Development and Relationships Educator, and I'm based in Outagamie County, which is basically the Fox Valley, Appleton, Seymour, Kaukauna, Little Chute, Shiocton, home of lots of cabbage as the season growing goes on. And I'm really excited, and it's been fun to work with my friend Jane in preparing this and looking at what information we have. Boosting your energy has been our resource for the most part of many of the things that we're going to talk about today. And we've got this information at the end of the PowerPoint as well, so that you can look at some of those resources as we're sharing today. Okay, so starting off, the key elements that we're going to talk about today are how to eat for energy, the importance of exercise. We're going to talk about sleep, how to control your stress, the importance of using nature's energy, and then keeping focused on your goals and what's important to you. So we won't spend too much time on this slide, but we're going to move right into that food and eat for energy. Learning to love fruits and vegetables. And I think many of us, as we grow older and wiser, we really do appreciate the elements of nature, and the a crunchy carrot and eating that sauerkraut and appreciating what we've got out there. And we had that discussion without even asking about apples and all the fun things that we get from apples. And it's the activity as well as enjoying the flavors and what do you reap from the benefits of those apples. So one of the things that is recommended for getting more energy is to roast your vegetables, and not to cook them to death, but to roast them and to keep the deep, rich flavors of the veggies, and just helping their starches start to convert to sugar around 375 degrees in the oven. So that releases a nutty sweetness. So you can roast peppers, mushrooms, onions, tomatoes, carrots, make a vegetable stir fry with onions and garlic, fresh ginger to zap it up. Smuggle some pureed vegetables into your recipes. I know a lot of people now are using cauliflower, mashed cauliflower rice and pasta in their pizzas. And you can buy it pre-cut, but I really love just chopping up those vegetables because that's a good stress reliever. And you also, you see some benefits from doing that too, of really feeling good about it. And if you do it as a family, you can use that as your chop talk. So it's not your shop talk, it's your chop talk. So you're talking with your grandkids or your kids or your friends as you're making these foods and enjoying and reaping the benefits of good nutrition. This isn't new to you.
And Karen, I was just going to add, I
Yes.
love to roast my asparagus and my green beans, little olive oil, little black pepper, absolutely delicious. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes, thank you. I can't see you, so you'll just have to interject.
It's okay. I will do that.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Jane. And so the MyPlate is not anything real brand new to us. It's been around for a long time, but if you haven't been there in a while, go to choosemyplate.gov. So if it's too cold this afternoon yet and you're still waiting for the ice to thaw, go in and check out what they have, because they have many activities and things that you can do to help you figure out, you know, what you might do in terms of your grocery shopping or your menu planning, or just thinking about what kinds of foods you're going to eat moving forward. And, you know, thinking about what you're eating and what your portion sizes are is really important. One thing that I discovered in preparing this with Jane was something from Tufts University, TUFTS, and they have a MyPlate for older adults. And it's a really neat resource. And it gives you more specific things about considering the foods that you do have on hand and plan for the meals with perhaps some different food choices. So they have a whole, as you can see on the PowerPoint slide, a whole thing that you could print off and put on your refrigerator. And they also have some ideas that I know some of us really like recipes, and some of us hear recipes and we roll our eyes and we go, we've got 2 cupboards of recipe books. We don't need any more recipes. But sometimes we need some ideas of things to make that's a little bit different and things you might want to try. So one thing that caught my eye was the night before breakfast oatmeal. And so it's a 1/2 cup of oats, a 1/2 cup of milk, and a 1/2 cup of fat-free, low-fat yogurt. And you just put that together overnight, mix it together, and you can add berries, bananas, and other fruits, cover it and leave in the refrigerator overnight, and then have it for breakfast. So you don't have to cook the oatmeal. It's you know, it's going to be in that milk and yogurt, and it's just kind of a different kind of breakfast option for you, and just something to think about. So again, they've got some good handouts if you go to Tufts University, and things that you can print off if you want, or just read. But to plan for the meals of what's going to be on your grocery list, what do you need, and think about what is going to be something that you're going to enjoy eating.
And Karen,
yeah.
I was just going to add one more thing in. As I've explored the MyPlate site, there's really some neat interactive opportunities that you can enter personal information about yourself, and it will give you some great information about food intakes. So, and thanks, Heather. She has put the Tufts MyPlate right in there. So thank you, but lots of great resources. So thanks, Karen.
Yep. So has everyone seen the slides okay now? Someone said they saw a black box.
Yeah, there's still some black boxes on the top and the bottom.
I don't know what else
Stop
I can
sharing,
do.
maybe. Oh wait, they're going away.
It's better now? Okay.
Yeah, there's
Thanks.
still one at the bottom though. I don't know if there's something on your screen that is over it, or
It's a little thing that says you're sharing your screen, so I can't get rid of that, can I?
oh, okay. I don't know.
Okay, sorry about that, but thanks for letting us know that you couldn't see the whole thing. So here you can see the Tufts University, and if you go to that website, you'll be able to download it and maybe, you know, make a copy and put it on your refrigerator as kind of your pinup of the week or the month, and things to think about. And avoid those crash diets. Nothing comes easy, so you know, just by stopping to eat and not eating at all isn't going to help. So it does take time to plan for these things and to be mindful about what's good nutrition and getting those balanced diet. So Jane, what about caffeine? I know that you like caffeine. Can you tell us a little bit more?
I can, to a point. So just to remind ourselves that caffeine can increase or decrease our energy level depending on how much we consume. And caffeine does help increase our alertness for an hour or two after consumption, but reminding ourselves that too much can cause insomnia. And my physician really advised me that I needed to look at, because of some medical considerations, that I needed to limit my caffeine intake. So suggesting that I limit it to the morning. And I've got my little cup here. I'll try to cover up any commercial endorsements here. But what I've done, and I've asked for, or I do it at home, is that I get 2/3 decaf and 1/3 caffeine in my coffee, just to limit that caffeine intake. And it's really been helpful. And then I limit it to the morning and, don't continue it into the afternoon or the evening. And I think also to remind ourselves that there's caffeine in Diet Colas, there's caffeine in kind of that yellow-green beverage, soda, and even in some teas. So keep that in mind, that there is caffeine in a lot of things. And so I have found a way just to be able to limit that and yet enjoy a little bit in the morning. So thanks for asking, Karen.
Oh, sure. I know you like that. And I forgot my tea bag this morning, but some of us like our tea, and some of it's decaffeinated and some has caffeine in it too. So being aware of what we're drinking and how often we're drinking it and when is great. So thanks. Those are wonderful examples. Okay, now I lost my, oh, there we go. Okay. So another thing that we sometimes drink, and sometimes in Wisconsin, we know it's maybe a challenge, but to think about limiting our alcohol. If you're going to drink, do so in moderation. That's nothing new. And at a time when you don't mind having your energy wind down. So sometimes alcohol has a sedative effect, and it can be especially strong at midday when you might become a bit lethargic. So try to avoid alcohol at lunchtime. And then avoid the 5 o'clock cocktail if you have to have energy in the evening. So if you have to go to a meeting or sing in the church choir or something, might not be too good an idea to have some drinks before that. But if you want to just wind down a little bit, a glass of wine with dinner is a reasonable choice. And again, health professionals are telling us if you're going to drink in moderation, and no more than 2 drinks a day for men and 1 for women. Then we have our water. Drinking water has been known to enhance performance for most of our activities. So if you're feeling fatigue, drink water. It might be good now if you want to, if you don't have one handy, to go get a glass of water and just, walk out to the kitchen and get some water and come on back as you're listening to Jane. Jane's got some tips about how she monitors how much water she's drinking every day.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So I have my handy dandy water bottle that I got when I was living at Fisher House, that's connected with the VA hospital. And it's got this nice straw at the top, but I literally measured this, and it's a 24-ounce container, so then that I know and I can monitor how much I'm drinking. The other tip that I have when I'm at home, I grew up on a farm in the country. So when I moved to the city, I could taste the chlorine. So, but what I found is that if I keep it refrigerated, I don't taste the chlorine as much. And I would just encourage you just to take a sip. Remind yourself to keep sipping, because sometimes we don't realize that we're thirsty. So just keep sipping. And the other thing I like to remind people, now if some of you are on the Zoom are Olympic athletes, that's okay. I am not. So I really have found that water is that beverage of choice to hydrate. So just encourage that water intake
Yep,
in the
so
morning.
drink up, no calories. Sometimes when I think I'm hungry, I'm actually thirsty. Good point, Dan. Yeah, so just going and having some water will help refresh and hydrate you and give you your body something to absorb. So good ideas. Thank you. So drink water and exercise. Exercise regularly. Well, speaking of the Olympics, Jane, what do you have recommending us now getting out of the Olympic season?
Well, and this is an interesting thing. It's almost like counterintuitive, but exercise is a proven energy booster. So try putting it on your calendar. Treat it like an appointment and make a commitment to yourself to follow through. And again, as you know, we will say throughout the program, check with your doctor before you start any new program. And the recommendations are 150 to 300 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week. That doesn't mean a marathon, or like Heather is, you know, she's a great runner and I admire that. But just moderate aerobic exercise, and then 2 or more strength training sessions that focus on those major muscle groups, and then allow that 48 hours between the muscle building workouts. And so I am going to share a few things with you from the Strong Bodies program, and just throw in the chat, how many of you are participants in Strong Bodies? I think some of the Strong Bodies participants have joined us for the Wise Wednesday. So we're glad that you're here. That's great. That's great to know. So yay, yes, Strong Bodies from Sherry, yay. She's one of our colleagues who teaches Strong Bodies, so excellent. And that is one of the resources that will be shared with you. So join in, because there's virtual opportunities. Ooh, Kiwani, 3 of us here, awesome. And there's some in person. We've got lacrosse, Mary Catherine, oh my gosh, wonderful, wonderful. We're glad that you're joining us. I'm going to ask you to just join in with me this morning. We're going to do a few warm-up exercises, and remember that warm-up and cool down is really critical, absolutely critical part of that. And even when I was taking step aerobics back in the day, boy, we really focused on the importance of that warm-up and cool down, you know, that 5, as it says on the screen, that 5 to 10 minute warm up. And sometimes that's as simple as marching in place, you know, swinging our arms, dancing, love it, or walking on your treadmill. And so we're going to try a few things. So I encourage you to join in if you feel you would like to, but please, we're going to do it sitting. I was afraid if I stood up, I might do something here in the office. So I'm going to ask you to join in sitting. And we're going to start with a couple of things. So safely in your chair, have your feet safely on the floor. And what I'm going to ask you to do, first of all, we're going to do some shoulder raises. We're going to do 8. So let's do 1. And only if it feels okay. We don't want anybody in pain. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we'll try some shoulder circles. We'll go backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we'll go forward 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And since we were talking about apples at the beginning, we'll pick a few apples. Okay, so just raising your arms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then just as good measure, got to grab my soup cans here. We're going to do a few, I don't know if you have soup cans handy, folks, but if you do, you can grab them, or your water bottles. I went into my cupboard and I found some soup cans. I'm going to try to keep the labels hidden here. And they're each about a pound. And so, you know, just recommending we start with those 1 to 2 pound weights, again, in the Strong Bodies program. So we'll just do 8 bicep curls with our soup cans. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thanks for joining in. I hope you're not too sweaty. And
You know, I keep forgetting to breathe whenever I exercise.
very important is that breathing. So, and we'll practice a little breathing later on in the stress relief area, but absolutely remember to breathe instead of holding your breath at all times. Thanks, Karen. That's an excellent reminder. And we'll talk a little bit about sleep with Karen.
Okay, so many of us maybe have been up for 4 or 5 hours, and some maybe not as long, but think about your mattress and your pillows. And, you know, sleep is really important to us. And when's the last time you replaced your mattress? Is it looking a little saggy? Or do you need some help maybe in having that mattress rotated and moved a little bit? But having those kinds of things in place are really important to good sleep. And I know those of you that have been in Aging Mastery, you've had a whole session and lesson on sleep and what to do to promote more sleep. So we won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but just again, reviewing some of those things that are important. So one is to make sleep a priority. So think about what your bedtime routines are and when do you get up in the morning, and trying to keep that pretty regular and routine. And that exercise that we just did with Jane is going to help you. So when you've been doing laundry and maybe the laundry's in the basement and doing those steps and things, that's considered exercise. And that's good for you. Or if you're outside like my neighbor, I don't know if you can hear him, but he's trying to scrape the ice off of the driveway right outside my window. So Richard's getting some exercise this morning. Avoiding smoking is really important. And that caffeine that Jane talked about, and her doctor, you know, helping her figure out how she could still have coffee and caffeine, but when to do it and how to serve it is good. Try and think about not too much alcohol right before sleep. Try some relaxation rituals. For some people, it may be prayer, it may be some spiritual, maybe some reading. Trying not to go to sleep to the television being on, because that blue light or the computer screen lights aren't real good for calming down our nerves. And those sleep medications that some people sometimes use, you know, it's not good to use it on a regular basis. Jane, I think you've got a teddy bear there with a sleeping hat. Is he still in the background there? So sometimes people have things that make them feel comfortable with a little, that's a Santa hat maybe, but, you know, I couldn't find a sleeping cap. But, you know, sometimes people do wear the eye masks, or they wear a certain flannel during the winter time just to make them feel comfortable. Or the weighted blankets now sometimes help people with that too. So practice good hygiene, and bed is for sleeping, and don't try and do too much. Like if you're still reading or working on projects and things, try and do that in another part of the house. Okay. And then there's the stress and learning to relax. And to use some relaxation kinds of things, finding a hobby. You know, I play French horn when I can, play piano. And a friend gave me a ukulele. Some of you might have heard that. Well, I haven't started to learn how to do that because that right now is too stressful for me to try and figure out how to play the ukulele. But in time, it might help. Get moving, like with that exercise. That chopping, you know, that helps when you're making your food. Making bread dough, and that relaxes sometimes and releases some of the stress. Jane, maybe you can talk about some of the stop, breathe, reflect exercises that we had talked about.
I'm just going to ask everyone to join in with me to practice some breathing. Sometimes we call it extended breath. Sometimes we call it diaphragmatic breathing. And so again, join in. We'll do it 3 times. And again, please sit safely in your chair. Get your feet on the floor. If you feel comfortable and you want to soften your eyelids, that's okay. Please sit safely is the important thing. And we're going to do it 3 times. I will describe it first. And you're going to breathe in through your nose. And this is that point where it's okay to stick out your belly. Okay, so you're going to breathe in through your nose, filling that belly, sticking that belly out. And then we'll just hold for a couple of counts. And then you just push it right out through your mouth, a little more extended than the intake breath. And you know what? It's okay to make noise when you do that, if you feel comfortable doing that. So we're going to do that 3 times. Again, in through your nose, hold it just for the count of 2, and then push that out through your mouth. So please join me. Okay, 1, hold, and push it out. Again. Out. 3rd time, in, out. Okay, and what I often talk about is that helps us when we think about responding instead of reacting, so that we're really using that prefrontal cortex instead of, you know, that lizard brain, that fight or flight response. And then sometimes in some programming we talk about that triangle of awareness and thinking about, you know, where are we physically, what's our emotion today, where are we mentally. And the one thing I like to share with people about your breath, think about it, it's always with you. So I know yesterday as I was driving in to the office and it was icy, I did my extended breathing just to kind of bring down that stress response and to respond instead of react as someone pulled out in front of me on the roadway. So thanks so much for joining in, but I encourage you, and there's often other opportunities like visualization, guided imagery, things that are available in some of our programming or from the Center for Healthy Minds at UW-Madison. There are apps, and I have found them incredibly useful. So really thinking about controlling that stress response.
Good points, Jane. And yeah, yesterday, when I talked to my sister, she said my brother-in-law had gotten home and his knuckles were just like, it was hard to get it off the steering wheel because he had been driving in some bad weather, and that can be very, very stressful. So yeah, learning to, you know, release that energy, and that's a certain kind of stress. We have emotional stress, we have physical stress, and there's so many things happening in our lives that it's good to take care of ourselves by eating good, getting good sleep, exercising, drinking water, limiting the alcohol. But now we're ready to go outside. The sun is shining, and we're going to use some of nature's energy to think about how we can jumpstart our energy that way. So Jane, what do you have with the energy side?
Well, when we think of nature's energy, you know, we can think of things like gardening, well, in the summer, and hiking and those walks. And also, which we'll be talking a little bit about, is getting your Friluftsliv on. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And I just want to remind everybody, be sure to tune in on March 9th because for Wise Wednesdays, because we'll be having some of our wonderful master gardener volunteer that will join us to talk about gardening. And one term that we've used is that whole biophilia thing, that we have that innate connection to nature and other living things. And that comes from a Harvard biologist. And we also talk about naturescaping. Well, here we are on Friluftsliv, and it's really a Norwegian term that basically translates to free air living, being in the outdoors, you know, beneficial in so many ways. And I brought with me today, just to inspire me, from my Norwegian roots, I brought my Norwegian troll with me today, you know, kind of in homage to my Norwegian mother and my Norwegian grandmother. And so he is just a cutie pie, but to remind us of the importance of that free air or outdoor living. And it's really part of being Norwegian. And if you notice, during the Winter Olympics, the Norwegians won a lot of, you know, they're amazing skiers and cross-country skiers. And many Norwegian children, it was so interesting to me as I researched this, they go to school outdoors in the wintertime. It amazes me. And thinking about those things in open air living, but thinking about all the snow fun and snowshoeing and cross country and sledding and snowboarding and the skating and bird watching, even by, I mean, here by the Sheboygan River, the birds are out there even in the winter time, and tracking those animals. And some people do winter camping and cookouts. My neighbor was grilling out the other day. I said, oh my gosh, I was so impressed. He had his grill out, and they were heading to Florida, but he was grilling out for his son. So his son had had something to eat while they were gone. And even that whole notion safely of shoveling, or I've noticed, you know, folks getting out their snow blowers, that kind of thing. And this term Friluftsliv, and I kind of added it to my Norwegian vocabulary along with ufta. And if you want to know what ufta means, you know, talk to me sometime. That's like totally in my family, along with lefse, lutefisk, rumegrøt, and a few other Norwegian specialties. So, and just to remind ourselves, this term, I did look it up, and it was coined by the playwright Henrik Ibsen in 1859. And so we're just going to ask you if you would like to join in and throw in the chat. What are some things you like to do outside in the winter? If you just want to throw it in the chat, that would be awesome. I know I like to just walk in the snow. Yeah, and just a reminder, please do it safely as well, especially with what we've had going on in the last couple of days. Ooh, walking. What else does anyone like to do outside in the winter? Ooh, downhill ski. Ooh, can be free if you're old enough. I love that. Snowshoeing. Oh, birds, tubing. Ooh, snowball fight with the grandkids. Making wood. I even know what that means. I even know what that means. I've done it. Snowmobiling, walking, frozen lake or creek, as long as it's still frozen. artificial hip. So being cautious, and absolutely we want folks to be careful. Ice fishing. Ooh, our days are only for younger people. I'm 80 years old.
How about just going for a drive and, you know, you're in your car, so you're protected. Maybe you have your heated seats on, but you can go to the park and, you know, park in the parking lot there if it's cleared and just watch the birds, go to a different location. That's kind of fun. Or even just at lunchtime today, sit by a window and sit outside and see what kind of wildlife you can see that's coming to join you for lunch. Kind of fun for that. Oh,
Yeah.
moon gazing.
Moon gazing. Oh, go to UW extension programs.
Oh, Kewaunee
Oh,
County.
near to my heart, near and dear to my heart. Thank you. And some people, you know, lately have done some of that, you know, like mall walking, and even here in the building that I work in, I call it walkabouts inside the building. So I take a walk inside the building. I look out the window to see what's going on. What are the birds doing by the feeder that the Professor Astro something or other professor has by his window, and so that kind of thing. But absolutely, we want people to be safe. So very, very good point. Anything else? Thank you for sharing, everyone. Appreciate it. And we'll go to Karen. She's got some other thoughts for us.
Well, yeah, and I'm kind of with that person that's got the hip replacements, and I've got both. So I start slow when I'm outside. So if I'm going to go outside, I layer my clothing. That's the key to staying warm and comfortable. So if you have different layers, you can, if you get warm, you can take one layer off and you're still going to be pretty safe. Finding the long johns and the thick socks, and wearing a protective layer to keep the wind and the wet out. You know, I didn't bring my mittens in from the car, but my gloves, they're okay, but then your fingers aren't as warm as when they're in mittens. Jane, don't you have some neat mittens?
I do. I have my mittens that I got at I got to get the pretty part on camera here, that I got at the South High Athletic Association fundraiser. And these are literally mittens made from wool sweaters. You know, they felt them and make mittens out of sweaters and line them with fleece. These are awesome and they're so warm. And I put them right up there with my smart wool socks that I wear, just so to keep my hands warm. And one more thing too that I've had people mention to me to be safe is that there are things available to kind of clip on the bottom of your boots as well, to be safe on the ice. And I know that my boots, I make sure I have the heavy lug ones with lots of traction on the bottom. And we've got in the chat, and if gloves sit inside the mittens, that's warm as well. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome. Thank you so much.
So yes, and those are the mittens actually that I do have in the car. They fit over the top, so you could take the top off and then you've got the gloves, and then you've put it over and you've got the mittens. So those kinds of things. Think about being waterproof, so if you do get wet, that it's not going to soak into your clothes. And as Jane said, warm hat, mittens, insulated boots, making sure that you're wearing socks. And if all else fails, you can fill your pockets with some hand warmers and maybe a hot beverage in your hands. So maybe making some of that hot chocolate can help too. So what's the next word of the day, Jane?
Okay. This comes from the other side of my family, my people. Huga is a Danish term, which is loosely translated to permission without guilt to be. So I think back, oh, and I brought another little friend with me today that I'll just share. And this is an homage to my Danish dad and my Danish grandfather who came over from Copenhagen on a ship. So I brought with me today, he's very friendly looking, however. This is my Danish Viking. Of course, he's got that little club there. But he's a very friendly looking Danish Viking. So I just wanted to bring him along in homage to my dad and my grandpa. And Hygge is really that whole notion of permission without guilt, to be kind of cozy, snuggling under that fuzzy blanket. I think about my fleece blanket that's all tied and wrapping myself in that, and wearing our fleece jammies or those woolen socks, that cup of hot chocolate, which we talked about, or having a good book. And also, which I wore just for all of you today, I am wearing my Danish sweater, which came over from Denmark. And so I'm feeling very cozy today in my Danish sweater. And I did a little research, and some of the terms that we talk about with Hygge is really creating that sanctuary in the middle of life, that cozy atmosphere, feeling of friendship. I mean, nobody was friendlier than my dad. Wow. My mother was Norwegian, so very, very quiet woman. My dad, he was like the action guy, but very, very friendly. But that comfort, that charm, simplicity and community, togetherness, well-being, kind of that cozy contentment, sort of like my sweater or my fuzzy blanket. And you can't have Hygge without Friluftsliv. So it all really, really blends together for that coziness, that contentment, that well-being, and really found through cherishing the little things, which really reminds me of my dad, being cozy and content in his recliner by the window, watching the farm tractors go by, visiting, seeing what's going on, that kind of thing. So I was really interested to research all this. So hoping for cozy contentment for all of you. And thanks for allowing me to share some of my heritage with you today. So Karen, we're going to go forward.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing them in. Jane took them home last night, not sure how the weather would be, and she brought them back into the office again today. So thanks for bringing your friends in. And it's added a little twist to it. This all started when I was writing this lesson for a different program last fall, and the Naturalist Corner from Mosquito Hill, which is part of the Outagamie County Parks Department, had an article and talking about being outdoors and how important it was to kind of recharge your battery. And I went, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of like what the program that I'm doing. So that kept me focused on my goal of what I was trying to achieve as Jane and I worked through this and decided what we wanted to share today for the Wise Wisconsin Wednesdays. So the thing about, jump starting, we started this out with the jumper cables, and now with how cold it's been, I don't know how many people really jumpstart their cars anymore, because maybe people take better care of their batteries on their cars than they do their own bodies. But we do need to start to think about our own goals and what do you want for more energy? Someone mentioned I'm 80 years old. I need to think about what I can do now as 80 years old. So what is it that energizes you, where you are today and who you are today? And sometimes we get tired of never feeling your best. February in Wisconsin is a difficult time because today is kind of a beautiful February day in Wisconsin, and let's celebrate that because the sun is shining. But that's not always the case. So when the sun doesn't shine and we just think about more cold, more snow, more ice, it can really be depressing for us. So we need to kind of think about what are our goals and what activities can we do to help enjoy us so that we do get more zip. Now, as we've been talking, I've been drinking more of my water, and I've really been trying to work on that this winter of trying to get more water in my life, because it does make a difference for how you feel. But you need to find things in your life that'll stimulate and energize you and help you channel your energy into the activities that really matter to you. So thinking about what's going to help energize you and make you really appreciate and enjoy the things in your life. So some of the resources Jane and I use today, and I've been holding some of them up, was the Harvard study called Boosting Your Energy, How to Jumpstart Your Natural Energy and Fight Fatigue. And that came from the Harvard Medical School, and it was printed in 2020, so it's pretty recent. And then I also mentioned the information I got from the Naturalist Corner from Mosquito Hill, which is in Outagamie County. I also mentioned the MyPlate information, and Jane also talked about, you know, the different activities you can go to if that's what you want to, you know, kind of work on for your goal. You know, everything we told you today, that's not probably too much, but what is the one thing you really want to work on? So Tufts Education, as I said, had some really good information about how to think about what you're eating. PBS, the Strong Women, Strong Bones program, there's lots of other resources, but there are some little exercise taped vignettes that you can watch. So that's on there as a hyperlink. And then how do you garden in the winter? That's, you know, some people, maybe that's an oxymoron, but some of you are gardening now, I would venture to guess. You've got herbs that you're growing in your house, and you've got plants that you're growing and nurturing. I love to look at the magazine Birds in Bloom, and we get a family subscription, and then we share it with others. But it's great to look at it because it talks about the different birds that you're seeing, but then also the plant life. And then as it goes into the seasons, and you get ready for the different times of the year. So, you know, there's different kinds of magazines and resources that people may like to tap as well. So those are just some of the resources that we have to share with you. And let's see, is there anything else? Yes, there's one more slide, I think. So our next question for you is, what's still circling in your mind from today's session? What were you thinking we were going to talk about today? Was it how to take care of your car and your jumper cables? Or were you thinking it would be something else? So if there's something that's still circling in your mind, you can put that in the chat. And we're going to have an evaluation as well. And so we thank you for attending. But if there's any discussion or questions